No one inside the Buffalo Bill's supermarket in the town of Cody that day knew they were standing just a mile and a half away from a secret prison. No one noticed that the woman who slipped through the automatic glass doors at 4:12 p.m. had once been mourned by all of America as someone already dead. Security cameras captured only a blurred image. A figure unnaturally thin, wrapped in a faded men's jacket, sleeves hanging past her wrists. Her head was bowed so low that her face nearly vanished beneath the shadow of the hood. Every step looked like it required the last remaining fragments of willpower to drag her body forward. She didn't look around, didn't look at anyone, didn't look at anything except the cold tiles beneath her feet. The woman walked straight to the aisle of cleaning chemicals. With trembling hands, she picked up bottle after bottle of cheap bleach, placing them into her basket as if following instructions already engraved in her mind. No hesitation. No price checks. No choices. At the checkout counter, she reached into her coat pocket. Once. Then again. No money. In the brief moment when the fluorescent lights shone directly onto her face, the cashier saw skin so pale it was nearly translucent. Lips tinged blue. Eyes completely empty. She collapsed. No scream. No plea for help. Her body hit the floor like an inanimate object. 8 minutes later, an ambulance arrived. 40 minutes later, a police officer re-entered her fingerprints into the national database. And then, the operations room of the Park County Sheriff's Office fell into absolute silence. The file that appeared on the screen carried a single status. Deceased, 2014. The name in the record was Kelly Brooks, an 18-year-old girl who vanished on Specimen Ridge 7 years earlier. A disappearance ruled an accident, a name her family had already mourned. But at this moment, Kelly Brooks was breathing, and the most terrifying question was no longer, how did she die? It was, where had she been living for the past 7 years? Before she became a cold case file locked away in a police cabinet, Kelly Brooks was just an ordinary young woman. Kelly lived with her parents in the suburbs of Wyoming. She wasn't reckless, and she certainly wasn't the kind of person who caused her family unnecessary worry. If anything, Kelly was meticulous, almost obsessively so. Every trip was written down. Every route was researched in advance. In her statement, Kelly's mother later said her daughter had one habit that never changed. If Kelly promised she'd be home by 8, the phone would ring at exactly 8. If she was running late, she would call ahead. She never left her parents waiting in silence. In the summer of 2014, Kelly had just graduated from high school. She saved money from part-time jobs to buy a better camera. Yellowstone was her dream destination, not for thrill-seeking or danger, but to photograph nature from above, where midday sunlight turns entire valleys into still paintings. Specimen Ridge wasn't a popular trail for tourists. It was raw, lightly traveled, and poorly marked. But Kelly prepared. She printed maps, checked the weather, packed enough water for a day hike. On the morning of August 12th, Kelly had breakfast with her mother. There was no argument, no bad feeling. She put on a light jacket, tied her hair neatly, and promised she'd call once she was back down the mountain. At exactly 9 a.m., a camera at the park's north entrance recorded Kelly's silver sedan entering Yellowstone. A checkpoint employee later recalled that she looked calm and focused, nothing like someone about to disappear from the world. Kelly began her hike with a light backpack. Inside were 2 bottles of water, a few energy bars, a windbreaker, and the camera she cherished. At 11:40 a.m., Kelly's mother's phone buzzed. The message contained only a few words. "It's very quiet here. Signal's getting weak." Those were the last words Kelly Brooks ever sent to the outside world. Specimen Ridge is beautiful in a way that has no regard for human life. Bare slopes stretch endlessly. Petrified trees stand frozen like witnesses to millions of years of history. There are no clear trails. No voices. Only wind, stone, and a silence that grows unsettling the longer it lasts. Kelly navigated using natural landmarks she had marked in advance. The sun stood high, harsh light reflecting off limestone, compressing the air until everything felt suspended. In a place like this, one wrong turn, just a few steps off course, can erase direction entirely. As the sun began to sink, the parking lot where Kelly had left her sedan remained empty. No sign of her return. No calls. No messages. By 8 p.m., Kelly's mother started calling. No answer. At 9, concern turned into panic. The family contacted Yellowstone Rangers. The response was calm, familiar, and unforgiving. Night searches in this terrain were considered suicide. The forest at night doesn't belong to humans. The search began the next morning, and it became the largest operation of that summer. Thermal-scan helicopters, tracking dogs, mounted units, and dozens of volunteers combed every meter of land. But Specimen Ridge doesn't hold scent. The wind constantly shifts, tearing tracks apart. Dogs circled endlessly, confused and defeated. There was no blood, no torn clothing, no signs of struggle. Kelly Brooks vanished as if she had never existed. On the 5th day, a group of volunteers spotted something small wedged between two rocks deep inside a narrow ravine. A camera lens cap. Inside was a tiny marking, painted by Kelly herself so it wouldn't get lost. Hope flared, then died instantly. There was no body, no backpack, no camera. By the 6th day after Kelly Brooks disappeared, the atmosphere at Specimen Ridge had completely changed. The urgency of the first days was gone. In its place was a heavy, grinding exhaustion, fear hidden behind the hardened faces of the search teams. Volunteers were divided into small groups, forming long human chains across the mountainside. Heads lowered, they scanned every rock crevice, every low shrub. Some whispered prayers. Others clenched their teeth through muscle pain brought on by sheer exhaustion. But no one stopped. Because in their minds, Kelly could still be out there, injured, unable to move, waiting to be found. Thermal scanning helicopters swept low overhead, but the bright spots appearing on the screens turned out to be elk and bears. Animals moving calmly through their world, unaware that an entire family was being slowly crushed by waiting. The theory that Kelly had been attacked by wildlife was raised, then quickly collapsed. There were no drag marks. No blood. Nothing to suggest an attack had ever taken place. Professional climbers were brought in to descend into the deepest ravines, places rarely touched by human feet. Roped in, they slid down sheer rock faces, facing the constant risk of a fatal slip. But at the bottom, there was only stone. And silence. In the days that followed, the weather turned harsh. Scorching heat during the day. Sharp temperature drops at night. Every passing hour dragged Kelly's chances of survival lower. After 2 weeks, the park's resources were nearly depleted. No new clues. No abnormal heat signatures. Volunteers were close to collapse. A decision was made behind closed doors. The active search would end. In the official report sent to the Brooks family, the cause was stated briefly and without emotion: an accident in dangerous terrain. A possible fall into a deep ravine. A body likely concealed by natural elements. Kelly Brooks was declared presumed dead. There was no funeral. No body to bury. Only a camera lens cap placed inside a memory box, and a bedroom left untouched, as if its owner had only stepped out and might return at any moment. The 7 years that followed did not pass in days, but in waiting. Kelly's parents never formally accepted their daughter's death, but they no longer had the strength to hope either. Every morning, they lived in a suspended state, where the pain was not final enough to end, and hope was too weak to begin again. Kelly's mother kept her phone beside her even while sleeping. She never deleted the final message. That short line on the screen became a recurring presence in her dreams. "It's very quiet here." Quiet enough that no one heard Kelly Brooks disappear from the world. In the Yellowstone Ranger records, Kelly's case was classified among those who never returned. One name among hundreds. A thin folder resting silently in a steel cabinet, opened only when someone new was assigned to the post. Life went on. Time moved forward. The people who once searched the mountains slowly forgot the young woman's face. Only her parents never did. They aged in silence. Each passing summer carried the same unanswered questions. If Kelly were alive, how old would she be now? If she were alive, where would she be? And if she was dead, why had the mountains never given her back? No one knew that during those 7 years, Kelly Brooks had not been lying beneath the cold stone of Specimen Ridge. She was not killed by a bear. She did not fall into a ravine. She did not die of hunger or exposure. Kelly Brooks had lived. But it was not a life. And on a November afternoon in 2021, just a few dozen miles from where she vanished, the truth began to crack, starting with a single collapse on a supermarket floor. On November 16, 2021, the town of Cody slipped into the first days of winter. Icy winds swept through empty streets, carrying thin snow and the sharp metallic scent of the coming cold. Buffalo Bill Grocery was one of the few places still lit, still filled with voices. At 4:12 p.m., the automatic glass doors slid open. A woman stepped inside. No one noticed her right away. In Cody, poverty, homelessness, and people living on society's margins were nothing unusual. But there was something about this woman's walk that everyone who later recalled her remembered clearly. She moved slowly, dragging her feet as if every step caused pain. A baggy gray coat stained with grease. Faded, torn jeans. Thin sneakers, completely inadequate for Wyoming's winter. She never looked up. Never made eye contact. She stayed close to the shelves, as if trying to fold herself inward, to disappear among bottles and price tags. One store employee later recalled that the woman carried a strange smell. Not alcohol. Not ordinary sweat. It was the odor of dampness, clothes worn too long without washing, mixed with the sharp sting of chemicals. She stood in the cleaning aisle for a long time. Her hands trembled as she picked up cheap bottles of bleach and placed them into her basket. No second thoughts. No comparisons. As if a list in her mind allowed no deviation. 3 bottles of bleach. 1 stiff scrub sponge. 5 cans of low-cost processed meat. At 4:30 p.m., she approached checkout lane 4. The cashier read the total. The woman began digging through her coat pockets. Her movements grew frantic. Panicked. No money. In that moment, the lights shone directly onto her gaunt face. Skin drained of color. Lips turning blue. Her empty eyes drifted past the room, as if she were seeing somewhere else, somewhere far from this supermarket. Then she collapsed. No scream. No reflex. Her body crumpled beside the conveyor belt like a hollow shell. Employees called for an ambulance. Customers stepped back. No one knew they had just witnessed the only moment in 7 years when Kelly Brooks's body could no longer obey. At the emergency room of West Park Hospital, doctors quickly realized this was not a simple fainting case. Critically low blood pressure, a weak pulse, a body weight at dangerous levels. When they removed the woman's filthy clothes, they froze at what they saw. Her body was covered in scars, old and new layered together. Circular burn marks. Deep cuts that had healed improperly. Faded indentations around her wrists and ankles. When she regained consciousness, her reaction sent chills through the medical staff. She curled inward, pulled the blanket over her face, and muttered in terror. "Please, let me go home. If I don't, they'll be angry." She had no identification. She refused to give her name. Her behavior showed clear signs of prolonged captivity and abuse. Police were called. The responding officer tried to speak with her, but the woman repeated only one sentence, over and over, like a plea to someone unseen. Following protocol, he finally ordered a fingerprint scan to establish her identity. The scanner activated. The data was sent. 40 minutes later, the system returned a result. The dispatcher stared at the screen, then stared again, then requested confirmation. The match came back 100%. Name, Kelly Brooks. Status, deceased. Presumed accidental death, 2014. The room went dead still. A case buried for 7 years had just come back to life. Kelly Brooks was not only alive, she was lying in a hospital bed, less than 50 miles from where she had disappeared. When Wyoming State Major Crimes investigators arrived, they didn't see a survivor. They saw a person worn down to the point where almost no sense of self remained. Kelly didn't respond when her name was spoken. She sat on the bed, knees pulled to her chest, rocking gently back and forth, a motion shaped by habit, not comfort. In the quiet room, she whispered a single sentence. "I have to finish the list." And in that moment, the investigators understood something deeply unsettling. Kelly Brooks had never been free during those 7 years. She hadn't gotten lost. She hadn't run away. She had been held captive. Kelly Brooks's identity was confirmed, but that did not mean she had come back. Biologically, she was alive. But Kelly's mind was trapped somewhere else, in a place where time no longer moved in any recognizable way. Doctors described her condition in cold clinical language, yet what they were witnessing looked like a human being who had survived hell. Kelly's body bore unmistakable signs of long-term confinement. Thick calluses covered her palms. The skin around her wrists was rough and misshapen, marked by pale circular scars where metal or rope had tightened for years. Identical round burn marks dotted her back, too uniform to be accidental, evidence of deliberate punishment. But what frightened doctors most were Kelly's reflexes. Every time the hospital room door opened, she flinched instantly. Shoulders hunched, eyes squeezed shut. Her breathing stopped for several seconds. This was not the response of a patient. It was the reflex of someone conditioned to believe that any sound could bring pain. A psychologist noted in her report that Kelly displayed signs of total submission. She wasn't afraid of police. She wasn't afraid of doctors. What she feared was something invisible, punishment for doing something wrong. On the 3rd day in the hospital, Kelly's mother was allowed to visit. Investigators hoped the reunion would break the wall of silence. Instead, it unfolded in a way no one expected. When her mother burst into tears and rushed forward to embrace her daughter, Kelly recoiled. She pressed her back against the wall, eyes wide with terror, as if facing a threat. Kelly began apologizing, over and over. Her voice trembled, shattered. "I didn't run away. I didn't mean to. I just fell. Please don't be mad. Please don't punish them." The broken sentences plunged the room into silence. Kelly wasn't talking about the forest. She wasn't talking about an accident. She was talking about punishment, about having to justify herself to someone who had the right to be angry. Investigators understood they were dealing with a victim of extreme psychological control. Kelly did not believe she was safe. To her, the hospital was just another room, and freedom itself was a dangerous concept. From fragmented memories, a picture began to form. Kelly mentioned stairs leading downward. Darkness. A place without day or night. She had never lived in the forest. Kelly Brooks had been held inside a space created by human hands. And based on her behavior, that place could not have been far. While medical staff worked to stabilize Kelly Brooks's mental state, investigators began moving backward through time. They needed to know where Kelly had been before she appeared at the supermarket. Security footage from inside and outside Buffalo Bill Grocery was pulled. Then traffic cameras, residential cameras, business surveillance within a 3-mile radius. The images formed a disturbing sequence. Kelly was walking. She hadn't gotten off a bus. No one dropped her off. She emerged from a residential neighborhood southeast of downtown Cody. It was a quiet area. Single-story houses, wooden fences, neatly trimmed lawns. Nothing remarkable. Nothing suspicious. In the pocket of Kelly's filthy jeans, police found a crumpled piece of paper. A shopping list. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, but confirmed to be Kelly Brooks's own. On the back of the paper was a faint ink imprint from an old stamp. Image restoration slowly revealed the name, Red Canyon Repairs. A small auto shop on the edge of town. Customer records were reviewed. One address matched. Exactly 1.5 miles from the supermarket. The house at 142 Elm Street was owned by Simon and Alice Wayne. Quiet inquiries with neighbors produced the same descriptions. A polite couple. Kept to themselves. religious, never caused trouble. No one remembered ever hearing them argue. But one elderly man who lived across the street recalled something else. He had seen a young woman in the Waynes' yard, usually early in the morning or late in the evening. She did chores, always kept her head down, always wore oversized clothing. No one asked questions. No one suspected anything. Evil had lived among them, hidden inside absolute normalcy. In the early hours of November 17, 2021, the quiet block on Elm Street was awakened by sounds it had never heard before. Metal clashing, sharp commands, the rapid footsteps of a tactical unit. A high-risk search warrant was executed. Police didn't know whether weapons were inside, or whether there were other victims still being held. The front door was breached. Simon and Alice Wayne were arrested in their bedroom. There was no resistance, no panic. What appeared on their faces made officers' blood run cold. It wasn't fear. It was indignation, anger at having their privacy violated. Inside, the house was disturbingly clean. The living room was tidy. Wedding photos hung neatly above the fireplace. The familiar smell of coffee and cleaning products filled the air of a middle-class home. There were no signs of violence. No prison. Nothing resembling a crime scene. Until one investigator crouched down in the kitchen. Deep scratches scarred the linoleum floor in front of a large double-door refrigerator. These weren't accidental marks. They showed something heavy had been dragged back and forth repeatedly. Two officers pushed the refrigerator aside. Behind it was a section of wall that didn't quite match. No handle. No obvious gap. Just a thin outline, carefully painted to blend with the kitchen. A false door. The key was found in Simon Wayne's nightstand. When the lock clicked open, a wave of foul air rushed out, dampness, human confinement, the harsh sting of chemical cleaners. Behind the door was a steep wooden staircase descending into darkness. Tactical flashlights swept the space below. The walls were lined with professional soundproofing material. No windows. No natural light. In the center of the room lay a filthy, thin mattress placed directly on cold concrete. A plastic bucket with a lid served as a toilet. A few empty water bottles. A thick metal ring bolted into the floor, attached to a rusted chain. The chain's length was calculated precisely. Long enough to reach the mattress. Long enough to reach the bucket. But not long enough to reach the stairs. On the wall, at a level for someone forced to sit on the floor, were yellowed sheets of paper. Short, cold, and motionless commands. Only speak when spoken to. Always look down. Be grateful when you are fed. On a high shelf, out of reach of anyone chained below, sat a clear plastic bag. Inside were old clothes. A faded t-shirt. Denim shorts. Lightweight sneakers. The clothes Kelly Brooks had worn the day she disappeared. They were not stored. They were displayed. What Kelly Brooks was able to tell was never a complete story. It came in fragments, shards of memory pieced together over weeks of therapy, with a psychologist always ready to stop the moment she began to break. In the first months, Kelly screamed. She screamed until her throat tore raw. Screamed until her voice disappeared entirely. No one came. There was no echo. The soundproofed walls swallowed every sound and returned nothing but absolute silence. When the screaming stopped, the next phase began. Simon Wayne often came down into the basement at night. He didn't hit her. He didn't speak. He simply sat in the corner of the room, turned off the main light, left a dim glow behind, and watched Kelly for hours. Not knowing when pain would come was more cruel than pain itself. But the most terrifying jailer was not Simon. It was Alice. She designed the lessons, tasks meant to erase the boundary between a human being and an animal. Kelly was forced to eat from a plastic bowl placed on the floor. If she spilled it, she went hungry. If she lifted her head, she was punished. Kelly's name slowly disappeared. She was no longer called Kelly. No longer called anything at all. She became it. The couple convinced Kelly they had implanted a tracking device inside her body, that every heartbeat, Every surge of fear was being monitored. It was a lie. But in darkness stretched across years, it became an absolute truth. The first time Kelly was taken outside was 4 years after she was captured. She sat in the car with her hands resting on her thighs, afraid to move. She saw people, cafes, wheelchairs, life continuing. But she didn't cry out for help, because they had shown her photographs of her family, her parents' house, their schedules, their routines. If you run, Simon told her, they'll pay for it. Kelly did not live for herself. She lived to protect her parents. The day Kelly collapsed in the supermarket was not the day she escaped. It was the day her body no longer had the strength to keep obeying. She didn't fall because of freedom. She fell because of exhaustion. The trial of Simon and Alice Wayne opened in May 2022, turning the quiet town of Cody into a national focal point. News vans lined the courthouse. Residents packed the hallways, not out of curiosity, but to see with their own eyes the people who had imprisoned another human being for 7 years in the middle of a residential neighborhood. The prosecution didn't need theatrics. The evidence spoke for itself. The prison blueprints found on a computer. Receipts for soundproofing materials purchased before Kelly disappeared. Gas station footage showing Kelly being followed for dozens of miles. The hidden basement behind the refrigerator, with its rusted chain and the rules nailed to the wall. Alice Wayne was the first to break. Facing life in prison without parole, she accepted a plea deal and entered a guilty plea. In court, Alice cried. She called herself a victim, claimed Simon manipulated her, threatened her, forced her to take part. He was the mastermind. I was afraid of him too, Alice said, her voice shaking. But the prosecutor didn't let that story stand unchallenged. He presented emails, chemical supply orders, handwritten notes that showed Alice's active involvement. Not a coerced accomplice, but a willing, deliberate one. Simon Wayne said nothing. Throughout the trial, he sat upright, his expression empty. When Alice shifted the blame, a faint smile flickered across his lips. No anger. No sense of betrayal. Only the quiet contempt of someone who viewed other human beings as experiments. The verdict was delivered in heavy silence. Simon Wayne was sentenced to 3 life terms without the possibility of parole. Alice Wayne received 25 years in prison, with the possibility of release after serving her sentence. To the legal system, that was justice. To the Brooks family, it was a wound that would never fully close. The man who designed hell for their daughter would likely die in prison. The woman who operated that hell might one day walk free. Kelly Brooks returned home after 7 years, but it was not the reunion her parents had imagined during countless sleepless nights. Kelly was free. No chains, no locks, no commands taped to the walls. But her body still behaved as if the chain had never been removed. Whenever she stood up to get food, Kelly lowered her head. Whenever she needed to use the bathroom, she whispered for permission. Every metallic sound made her flinch and curl inward. Kelly would eat only with plastic utensils. She refused to touch metal knives or forks. That sound pulled her back to the basement, where metal wasn't a tool, but a threat. Doctors called it severe post-traumatic stress disorder. But for the Brooks family, it was living pain day after day. Their daughter was beside them, yet her eyes sometimes went empty, as if she were still beneath the kitchen floor, behind the refrigerator. There were moments when Kelly would stare at the wall for minutes at a time. No words. No movement. In those moments, her parents understood that their daughter was no longer here. Not everyone who is rescued is truly saved. Kelly Brooks' story did not end with death, but it did not end with full rebirth either. It ended with a question left hanging. How many ordinary houses are hiding invisible hells? How many people are living in silence, just a few steps away from us? And how many cries for help have been swallowed, simply because evil looks so ordinary? Kelly Brooks walked out of her prison. But some prisons don't need walls. And some wounds never heal.